Hello. Hello. Thank you for coming to talk about this subject with me. For those of you who don't know me, allow me to introduce myself. My name is Heather Downing. I do lots of things and stuff, and as this nicely put together slide deck will show you, I do lots of things. I actually put some thought into the design of how this goes, and I am not a designer. I'm 100% a coder like most of you. So what you'd see here is something that's similar to what would be on my LinkedIn page or on my website. What's interesting, though, is that when we talk about how to make a true lasting impression in the human mind, these are not the things that people can recall by memory, are they? Because there's too many words for one, because we like to put in every single little keyword possible so that all of those recruiters can find us. When I kind of took a poll amongst my professional colleagues and some of the people I knew in the industry, there was only a few things that they said came to mind. So if we start over, I said, what do you think about me when you think about me as somebody in software? They said, oh, okay, well, I think of you as innovative, that you do a lot of bleeding edge, cutting edge stuff because that seems to be your thing. You talk about it a lot. They also said that I do a lot of enterprise work because I've actually never worked at a startup. I've never done my own side thing. I've only ever worked for Fortune 500 company projects. And so that puts me in kind of a unique position when it comes to the kinds of topics we talk about. Because I care about things like scale, and I don't get control of my database. So, there's a lot of things that I bring up in topics that make people associate that word with me. The other one is that I'm consumer facing. Because I had 11 years working in the hospitality industry before I stumbled onto the amazing world that is technology. A lot of people in our groups will say, hey, somebody needs to go talk to the client. Hey, Heather, you talk to people. You could talk to them about our architectural decision. So I would, a lot of that is that I'm consumer facing. And of course, another one that comes up often is that I'm a speaker. This is my 5th year actually speaking in front of an audience and my 3rd one internationally. So these are the things really that people remember about me. That looks a lot more trimmed down, wouldn't you say, than my first slide? And even my first slide, let's all be honest, was a lot more trimmed down than your resume. So why do we spend all this time doing that? Let's be very clear as to who the resume is for. It's for a recruiting company to be able to scan and look for specific words that may fit a job title, right? I'm not going to talk about that today because we all know to do that. Hopefully, yes. What I'm going to talk about is how you can craft your image in someone's mind, how you can be memorable. I'm also going to talk to you a little bit about what it means to do that consistently. So it's true, you can actually mold the impression that you give. And I learned this by working in engineering at an advertising company. And I just kind of watched the way that they would do this, not just for brands, but for people. So we're going to go over this a little bit. I know you all came here to learn how to become rich and famous developers and, go viral on the internet. But instead, today, you get 5% of that and 95% of a human psychology lesson. Hooray. But I'm technical, so I promise I will do this in a way that is actionable for you. So I am going to talk a little bit about feelings because we're human and they exist, but mostly what we can do about them. Because instead of talking about the fact that they exist, let's say, well, how do I impact now? How do I do anything about it? So the first question I'm going to ask you is, what do you want out of your current position or where you are? Research confirms that there is a real disconnect between your job performance and your job outcome. Okay? To get into that, we're going to get into how humans perceive one another in the workplace. And know that you can drive your perception at your workplace, or attend to it externally in the industry. We will explore both. When I first started out in my career, I certainly felt like I stuck out for the wrong reason in all of the ways. I feel like I was a sore thumb or a black sheep, and I'm sure to some extent, many of you have felt this way about different aspects of your life, but let's just talk about technology. We want to be enticing and not uncomfortable. And I felt like at first no one knew how to talk to me because I entered into technology at the age of 27, which automatically put me on different footing than somebody who's done this since they were, 10, and got to play around with technology early. My upbringing did not allow that, so I already felt like I was kind of on a back foot. But what I realized is that because of my awkwardness, I was only thinking about how I felt. I wasn't thinking about how my awkwardness was making everyone else feel awkward. I know that you kind of snicker about that a little bit, but it's true. I'll give you an example. Let's pretend that all of you are amazing developers, and this is not going to be about your technical level of expertise. All of you are great. Can we agree to that at least for an hour? Yes? Okay. All right. So if you're great and your colleague is great, because you're sitting next to each other, I'm assuming maybe your colleagues, and he says, oh, I'm really not that good at this, or I'm not good at that, and you know in the back of your head how many times that colleague has rescued your situation or pushed out a build last minute on a Saturday, and you know that they're badass. You know that they kick ass. But they keep going on and on about how they're not worthy and they're not good. It makes the entire room feel uncomfortable because then nobody knows what to say except for, oh, that's not true. But then it gets this uncomfortable feeling. So ironically, by putting yourself down, you make everybody else feel bad. Isn't that kind of strange? But it's true. Negativity shouldn't be present at all, and that's hard for me because I hate people. So it was difficult. I mean, it was true. It was difficult. I stuck out like a black sheep because I got away from hotels. I didn't want to be at the front desk anymore. I want to actually solve problems and not say, "Oh, I'm so sorry." I wanted to fix problems and get away. But the reality is, my experience there actually brought a lot to it, and I was trying to hide the fact that I was consumer-facing. I was trying to hide the fact that I actually do know how to talk to foreign dignitaries because I had to for my job. Because I wanted to just fit in. But when you fit in, you blend in, and that's not what we're here to do, right? We're here to be more visible, to celebrate sticking out. And this is not anything about, what kind of clothes you wear. It could be a little bit about the clothes you wear if you choose to, but honestly, this is about how you can embrace the way you naturally stick out and turn it into something that is a memorable thing about you. For example, anybody here go to the attendee party last night? 3 people. Okay, we're going to pretend like half of you. There is an awesome gentleman that I got to share the stage with yesterday that always wears this cool hat, that looks like it's from Australia or something. And he just goes everywhere with it. It's an iconic look for him. So that is part of the association of his brand. And I'm not in advertising, but I know a little bit about it. And whether or not you like it, you all have a brand right now. Where you wear, how you talk, where you go, what kind of technologies you like, the fact that you own dogs, cats, whatever. You have a brand, so why not craft it? Okay, let's talk a little bit about why others get promoted before you. Ooh, this is a big topic, right? Because if you're too busy keeping your head down and your nose to the grindstone, it's harder to see you. Part of managing yourself and your trajectory means making it easier for other people and opportunities to find you. If you sit here you're just pining away saying, I hope someday somebody notices how hard I work and how much I want to be promoted and get to that position, that's ridiculous. Don't do that. Getting coy or bashful about your accomplishments does both yourself and your work a disservice because it unintentionally makes the job of managing you harder. Think about that for a second. It makes it harder to manage you because they don't really know what you really want because you're not communicating it. They can't guess it. I mean, they can sort of guess saying, hey, maybe they want more time off. Maybe they want more money. We'd all like more money, right? That'd be great. But I mean, statistically speaking, money is not the big overall factor of job satisfaction. It has to do with recognition by your boss and your colleagues. Which leads me to the puzzlement I had as to why the idiot always gets the responsibility. Why does this keep happening? And it's not just in the places I've worked. I have talked to many, many developers who are like, I spent all this time integrating the 11th, JavaScript library, and this guy just comes along and says, no, we're doing Vue right now. And I'm like, wait, what's happening? We didn't even talk about this. He's like, I've decided. And I'm like, what? No research, nothing. It said, well, I read it on Hacker News, so it must be a thing. I mean, this is a real experience that I've had with many different scenarios. But guess what? That idiot that you see being promoted to being the lead, whether it's a project or over your whole team or over the company, it's because they're doing shameless self-promotion loudly and often. And you should too, with the caveat, there is a more refined way of doing it, and you don't need to lose self-respect in the process, but the lesson is there to be learned. You have one half of your job, that is to be the awesome developer that we already have agreed you are. The other half of your job is doing communication that to the people that matter that it has been done. And of course we're like, yeah, we do that. I have a Jira board. I use TFS, whatever you have, Trello maybe. But that's not good enough at all. If it was good enough, would somebody just kind of like walk by your desk and go tap, 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 hey, how's that X going? How is Y going? Do you know why? Yes, they absolutely could pull up the Jira board and look at the in progress and see that it's not done yet. But instead, they want to know how it's really going, so they seek the human connection because they want understanding. That's why it's harder to be remote. I know, because I am a remote employee now, and it was a big switch for me to do that. I have to over-communicate now, whereas I didn't have to so much because people could do drive-bys by my desk and talk to me. If you do it, but that person doesn't know about it, how do they know what's going on? So the big takeaway from this really is to do things and tell people. So think about this for a second. The reason why you want to restructure the way you communicate is because you have to put human perception first. We built computers to help us. We build all of these programs to help us, but they are not inherently human. And some of them, let's be honest, may be helpful, but don't have the best user experience. The best user experience you can truly have between colleagues and your bosses is to do it in person, or at least with your voice over the phone, or through a video call. That is the best way that you can communicate. And it doesn't have to be long, it doesn't have to be crazy formal. In fact, I would say that it's best if you do things almost like a, oh, by the way, as a side note kind of a thing, daily, every so often. For example, I get to write technical blog articles now. Pretty excited about that. I get to do that for Okta. And I have an amazing person who gates all of our blog posts. They want to make sure that, I use correct grammar and such. So anytime I get feedback, I fix it. And even though I will drop it into her column in Jira, it doesn't matter. I'll still ping her on Slack and say, hey, by the way, just so you know, I got that done if you're in a rush. So that took me 2 seconds to do, but it showed enough forethought to care about how it impacted her. Does that make sense? So that project manager that's like wringing their hands or like, oh my gosh, we're never going to get this out. When are we going to get this out? Can you tell me exactly when that happens? They will stop doing that if occasionally you just make it part of the way you communicate, that whenever you're done with something, hey, just so you know, this is done. They can choose to read that or not. They can choose to see that or not. You might say, oh, that sounds too chatty. I promise you, if your only communication is through some sort of messaging system and you never get to see their face, it's much better to ping them on something like Slack or Teams and just give them a hey, just so you know. And they could choose to ignore it and do things in their own time. But if you do that, that fosters trust in you already, that you clearly care about the big picture. So do things. Tell people. We agree? So believing that pointing to your achievements is being overly self-promotional and that good work should be enough on its own is ironically quite selfish thinking. Does anybody get to fill out those quarterly or annual self-assessment reports? Yeah. Do you know why those exist? Because really, a lot has occurred in the past year, and you're asking a human being to recall everything that you did that was awesome, on top of all the other people they have to remember. Yes, they'll probably remember a couple of real big accomplishments, but probably not all the work that you did to truly move the needle in your team. And a lot of that could be daily habits that may seem smaller, but add up to a lot better productivity, okay? This is done for a reason. I hated doing it because I usually would grade myself somewhere in moderate because, I don't want to say, I'm terrible at this because I don't want to lose my job, I also didn't want to say, I'm amazing and why have I not been promoted before? I didn't want to do that. I always wanted to be kind of in the middle. So I would always downplay a little bit, but I would try and be cheerful about it. That got me absolutely nowhere. Regardless of how awesome I was and how much I actually did for the company and their bottom line didn't matter, because you have to present the best version of yourself. For some reason, we check our salesmanship at the door once we get the job. Remember you got the job, you're like, yeah, I can learn anything. Ruby, I'm on it. Let's go. You can be excited about that, but then it's like you lose that salesmanship at your self-assessment. You lose that, and throughout the course of it, and you just get really, really quiet. It's true that over time, you'll get more and more responsibility, and it will become a default to just trust you. But a lot of people never even get to that default responsibility platform, and that's what I'm here to help you with. So let's say that you haven't really gotten much of a chance to do anything extraordinary because you're working on a legacy application, something that you're maintaining. So you're not exactly able to show off your research skills and put in the latest and greatest thing. So how do you show that you do have creativity for the next project? How are you able to demonstrate that? Luckily, there's a great way to do that, and that is to externalize the thoughts that you have about how things should be. What I'm doing right now is considered external thought leadership. I also did this at the company that I worked at before. And this right here is one of the biggest things that will change your career. And it doesn't have to be done on a stage. It could definitely be done at a meetup. You could write a blog. It doesn't have to be all the time, but you could write one. I'm much more of a video person, so I engage on YouTube. There's lots of different platforms to share the thoughts you have or to teach something you know. And you don't have to be the expert in it in order to do it. Because we all know that working hard and doing a good job is insufficient. If you want to be truly visible and remembered and to be the very first person in mind for a job, a project, to be somebody to come in and help a team, you need to stand out in a meaningful way. Promotion in big companies and tech companies of any scale is about leadership and, in many cases, management. Yes. You'll get well paid if you work hard and you do a good job, right? But you just won't get promoted all that fast or far. These are just my learnings and observations at some of the very big companies I've worked at in my life. So what I found was kind of a little bit of a ticket is that let's pretend that you really like deep learning and you think it's cool. You don't know a lot, but you just saw some really cool examples that Tess gave while she was here, or other different people here. And so you're like, I want to kind of talk about that, but it doesn't really have a place in my project or in my company right now. So what do I do about this? This is the point where you step outside of your organization and you show the rest of the tech community what you discovered, what you learned. I did that with voice. And ironically, after writing several blogs and giving several talks about it, the very first time that the company I worked at had an opportunity to do a voice project, they tagged me for it. Because they didn't have to trust that maybe I'll figure it out. They knew I already did, because I have a blog about it, because I already gave a talk about it. So if you're wanting more responsibility and you're not getting it inside of your company, let's see what you really got. Show the rest of the world. Maybe they'll catch up, maybe they won't. There's another bonus to externalizing the thoughts and creativity in your software engineering that you can bring to the forefront. If your company doesn't appreciate what you do and the kind of creativity you can bring, by demonstrating it externally, That is the first thing that another company can look at when they want to hire you, right? I haven't actually done a technical interview in 4 years because I have a GitHub, I have a blog, I've got many tutorials on YouTube, and lots of videos of me giving talks. So if they want to know who I am, I've kind of put it out there. Wouldn't you agree? That doesn't mean I can't go in and I can't whiteboard. That's fun for 2 seconds. It doesn't mean I can't do that. It means that they got the answers to what they wanted to know based on what I already put out there externally. So don't underestimate the power of doing that to benefit you, even if you're happy in the company you're in. Yep. It demonstrates your ability. Make it easy for people to find and endorse you. Anybody here have a dog? Maybe there's no dogs in Norway. No dogs? Okay. You have one? Yeah, cool. I'm not going to choose cats, not that they're not awesome, but for this example, it doesn't apply. So training dogs. There are a couple of different ways you can do it. You can teach them by intimidation, saying, oh no, don't do that. So by negative reinforcement. You can do positive reinforcement. Positive reinforcement, you kind of lead them towards the right answer, and then you make the right answer the easy one. And they choose that, and you reinforce that. That's what you need to do for people. Don't make it hard to find out that you know these things and you're capable of these things. Make it easy for everyone to manage you, for everyone to work with you, for everyone to find you so they can give you the job that you want or the project that you want if you work for yourself. Which is why you should network. This is an interesting word. I think it was, taken from us because to me, network means internet. And it became this social thing. Having a large and valuable network is a fantastic asset for advancing your career and your life in general, right? But it doesn't mean what you think it means. When most programmers ask me about networking, because they say I do it so well, what they're really asking me about is how they can use people to get what they want. But that's true. That is really what we're talking about here. I'm not about that at all. In fact, my personal philosophy, and the one I firmly believe you have to have for true success, is to figure out how you can give as many people as possible what they want, or even better, what they need. If you do that first, it becomes an organic growth of networking. You don't really have to work at it. You're just saying, what are you struggling with? Or like, hey, if you're ever interested in my slide deck, I'll be happy to share it with you. It's no skin off your back, and it may be something in there would have helped them. The wrong way to network is to do it for the wrong reasons. And I know it's really tough, especially when you start out and you're antisocial like I was. Okay? I know it's hard to believe, but all this is practiced. I used to work for Disney. I got taught. So this is a practiced extroversion. I'm a natural introvert. I would rather curl up with a good book in my room for hours than go out at a party. But I've learned that there's other ways in which I can meet people and I can share what I have. So most people start worrying about networking when they need something, and it's usually a new job. Usually that's when this happens, right? But that is the absolute worst time to build a network, because building a network takes time, and trying to rush the process and quickly get results from it results in you reeking of desperation, and people know it. I'm not talking about, talking to a recruiter. A recruiter, let's just call a spade, that is a false relationship in which they temporarily get to know you so that they can make money off of placing you somewhere. That's not a real network situation. That is just a temporary professional alignment, okay? Networking to start growing above and beyond a certain level is true connections with other technologists that will trust you. Because if someone asks me, Heather, I really need someone really good at doing CQRS, or somebody who's really good at that, I will immediately go to the people I trust that I've connected with, and I will say their name first. This isn't always about just your buddy that you happen to spend time with and go to an arcade with. I'm not talking about that. Someone you would really trust with that kind of responsibility. You probably met at a hacking event, or maybe at a previous company you worked at. That's where the true powerful networking comes into play, and those take time. The right way to network is to just put yourself out there a little bit to interact with people in person. I know this is tough for those of you who are really far away and live in more remote parts of the world. But please make an effort, or at least try and do it over like some sort of video client so you can see someone's face. You can connect a lot easier when you see somebody. So where do you actually go to network? The short answer is everywhere. It could be down the road at a restaurant, and you just happen to stumble upon somebody that was talking about monads, and you're like, oh, they must be in tech, you know? That happens to me at airports all the time. All of a sudden, I ran into an entire Java conference full of people because I heard somebody talking about database stuff. I was like, oh, they're a nerd. You know, and we just stumbled into it, and now I got to meet somebody super cool that now works at Google. That was neat. I just kind of put myself out there to say, hey, you know, tell me more about what you're doing. I know I'm a total stranger, but I'm interested. And most people will oblige you. The easiest and best thing to do is to find groups of people who are interested in what you're interested in. And congratulations, you all get 10 points, you're here. So this is a great place to start. And of course, meetup.com is a good place to find local groups. Be willing to put in a little bit of time. It doesn't have to be all the time. I know we all have families, but this is important. This is to grow not just a network of people that are your professional network, it's also to grow your network of friends. And I know that sounds kind of strange, but wouldn't you trust somebody that you know, would look out for you a little more than somebody that you don't really know very well? You don't really know much about them? Of course. So just put in a little bit of time to connect, which leads me to how we connect. So I would be remiss if I didn't mention that there are ways to brand yourself on social media, okay? I know there are many people that I know that refuse to get on it, and that's totally your call. But if you're wondering, well, you don't seem to get a whole lot of contacts about doing, I'm going to just put this out there, doing a speaking gig or doing a particular project, or you didn't even know that a conference was happening. Maybe it's because it's hard to find you. It's hard to communicate with you. So if you take yourself off of all social media, it's really hard to be part of anything viral that happens. It doesn't mean you have to spend your whole life there, and I think you should absolutely be healthy with it. But if you want to know how to be more visible, you probably shouldn't take yourself off of it. Find ways that you can engage with it in a healthy manner. And be your honest self on there. It's important that you don't sound like you are a salesman with all of the things you tweet or the things you put up on Facebook or LinkedIn. You know, I mean, even Stack Overflow is a form of social media. So don't be shy about popping on there and answering a question, even if it's a simple one. But when it comes to creating your authentic brand, the one that you have in the back of your head, you kind of know is starting to be there. That means you share the good, the bad, and the real with your followers on social media. Aspirational is great, but being relatable is what creates connections. And I know this because if all I ever did was put up pictures of how successful I am, people would hate me. What I do now is I admit when I'm freaking out because I have a really bad memory problem, and this is true, and all my friends can attest to this. I have a terrible, terrible memory leak going on in here. And I can't remember most of my presentations in their entirety. I mean, I even went to Toastmasters for this. And so once in a while, I'll just share that. Be like, you know, you would think I'd be able to memorize 15 minutes that I'm about ready to record for YouTube, but I can't. And I feel ridiculous that I can't do that. But by sharing that, that makes me relatable with a lot of other people who may have a problem with being in front of a camera or also suffer from memory issues. So showing myself as real is very important to create a genuine, authentic brand for yourself. You have to post with purpose. Avoid filler content. And I know some devs that do this, and please don't. It's great if you want to retweet occasionally something that came out that's really cool, like, hey, look, we can go to Mars now. That's great. Do that. But if you spam people every 30 minutes with whatever your bot could scan on Google to just put content out there, people can smell that a mile away. Like, don't do that. Filler content doesn't work, especially for you guys. We don't want to be sold to. I dislike going to booths at conferences for that reason. We don't like being sold. We just want to know how to get something done. We just want to know what you have accomplished. I would argue that in a way, developers are some of the most authentic people without filters you'll ever meet, you know? So be that, be yourself. I used to stress out if I didn't share something with my online audience every day. So I would search for something and anything that might keep people engagement going and all that stuff, because that's what they tell you to do in the advertising world. But the filler content wasn't giving my audience really anything truly that was something that I felt and that I authored. It didn't come off as genuine. It came off as filler, so don't include it. You need to speak like a human when you're on there. It's very tempting to speak incredibly technically, but that's why we get tweet threads that are like 14 long, because we do one of 14, because we want to talk technically, and we keep going like this. But remember, Twitter is meant for just brief thoughts. If you want more, do more on like Stack Overflow. If you want to grow it, perhaps you joined a Facebook group and you can be a little bit more in depth, or you can write a Medium article or put it out on LinkedIn. Just be mindful of doing really, really long, deep technical stuff in a tweet. Maybe just link off to what your thoughts are. You with me? Cool. And be moderately responsive. This is hard for me, because sometimes I'm like, I don't want to talk to people. And I'll wait a week to even check whether or not anybody responded to something I posted. But social media has the word social in it for a reason, Heather. So in order to grow your personal brands, you need to nurture your community and respect your readers the same way you want them to respect you, which means communicating with them regularly. And you can decide how regular that is. For me, it's usually like once every week, once every like twice a week. Maybe I'll do that, and I find it's not overwhelming. What's cool about this is that if you have a burst of creativity of what you want to say all in one day, there's an app out there for you. We use Buffer right now at where I work, but before I used Hootsuite, and I would just preload all the thoughts I had that are genuinely mine, not filler, right? Genuinely mine, and I would schedule them to go out every 3 days. And so even if I was traveling, my thoughts would still be out there regularly, and people who followed me could still benefit from what I had to share on a regular basis. To me, it sounds like a no-brainer. Why wouldn't you do that? Because most developers think that you have to just be up every day at a certain time and tweet things out or to push things out on LinkedIn. It's not that way. Please use technology to help you with this. Because if you aren't online, you are out of sight and therefore out of mind. You could be the best developer in the world, but without someone taking notice and knowing how to find you, opportunities to advance will just not come. They just won't. Why leave that in the hands of someone else to do the work for you of finding you? Take control of your career this way. Make it completely easy to find you. And make sure you automate your thought stream online so it doesn't have to be something that you do every day. I know I put this slide up and everybody's going to laugh, but I have to ask you to do this first. Very first thing you do, you leave here, check to see if your website works. Just your basics, like resumes are great, but put up a website that genuinely talks about what you like to do, what you're proud of, outside of just a list that you can see on a resume. A list doesn't tell a story. A list identifies potential, and that's it. Tell a story about how you solved a problem. I don't care if you're junior, senior, whatever. Tell a story about what you like, what you're particularly proud of, what you're hoping to do, and share a little bit about who you are as a person, because that's how we connect with someone different than us. I believe skills can be taught, but attitude cannot. It is a choice. And this is where we kind of get into the human part of this. So now that I've given you some actionable items to do online, you're all checking your website, you're going to automate your thought streams, right? Let's get into how to actually navigate getting promoted within your engineering organization, or how to get maybe opportunities outside of your work. So life isn't fair. The way that this works is that sometimes you're going to have to do some work that is beneath your skill level because you know that overall it helps maybe the company, maybe another developer. It doesn't directly shine the light on you. But if you talk about how you enjoy helping or you enjoy teaching, that right there is a little bit of becoming more visible. Wouldn't you agree? So now you become trusted. You don't necessarily always have to be in the spotlight. You can be the backup light, but you're still visible. It's important to do that. Let's go through some habits of some well-known developers. I noticed a trend as I've been speaking, luckily for me, all around the world. I've noticed there are a lot of things that some of these really well-known developers have in common. Like, I've known some incredible people who can code circles around me, but they don't do some of these items that I'm about to talk to you about. So take out your iPads and we're going to make notes. They pay attention to what others value. So we're going to call them super employees, you know, the ones that always seem to very quickly climb the ladder. They're always studying the preferences and the goals of their direct supervisors and the company at large. So they're going above and beyond what other employees are doing, and sometimes not by a lot, but just enough. And they're showing interest in the why of their company or the why of their team. They're motivated in showing what they want to learn and that they want to learn what it's like to be at the top, you know? They're interested in that, and they make it very clear. The result of paying attention is being able to discern what needs to be done and take action on it without being asked. Oh, I have to pay attention to that stuff. I mean, I come from a world where please just give me a JIRA ticket and I will go make it happen, you know? Let's go. I want to be just given a direction. But what starts to separate people from the pack are the ones that pay attention to this stuff, that think a little bit differently outside of it. For example, I am not what we'd call an on-time person. But I understand that NDC would love me to be on time with my talk. Knowing that I have an issue with watching the clock, I made sure that I was early so that no matter what, I could give NDC something that they valued, which is to not run over my slots and stamp and trample on the next speaker you're going to have. I paid attention to what they valued, even though I wouldn't say that I necessarily valued it right on the dot, right? Because I think as long as, the content's good, it's okay. But it's not. All cultures are different, and all people are different. So I paid attention to what they valued. And this could be as simple as somebody who really does not want to ask you for the 10th time to write a test before you put that PR in. Pay attention to what they value. Don't make it hard. It doesn't mean that they're just telling you what to do and now you have to, make it more awkward. Pay attention the first time. Pay attention to how they interact with other people, and just do it ahead of time. We actually do this if you're in a family with siblings. I was the eldest, so I never got the benefit of having someone older than me screw up in front of my parents. So I'm like, oh, okay, don't do that. I didn't get that benefit, but all my siblings did. So they didn't mess up quite to the extent I did because they were able to watch me do that. So pay attention to what other people value and try and pivot just a little bit. It doesn't have to be painful. These people also choose the right place for their talents. It's hard to be a super employee if the company's needs are very different from your abilities, talents, and value system. A 2015 research report by the Cicero Group found that one of the most important factors in employees consistently producing great work was recognition. And 37% of those respondents said that being recognized by a manager or by the company was the most important driver in great work. The most important driver. People work for other people, not companies, right? So does anybody here manage other developers? Anybody in the room? A couple of you? Cool. So this is for you. Your people are working for you. Yes, it is a company that you're working for, but I never thought about leaving a company. I thought about leaving a poor manager, leaving a poor dev lead, because they made my life difficult, because they didn't listen, because I tried really hard and I didn't get recognition. These are easy things to avoid if you pay attention, so my advice to you is to do so. But also make sure that if you're unhappy, whether you're a dev lead there or you're an aspiring one, find the place that will value what you do. We are so privileged to be in an industry that's in demand. If you wanted to, you could work for another company on the other side of the world and never leave your house. These are all possible for you, even now, even at your skill level right now. I promise you, there is a company that is the right place for your talents. So don't be shy in finding it. These people also focus on the big picture. And I was like, what does that even mean? I hate some of these buzzwords. They really kind of bother me. I'm very specific because I'm a dev, right? I'm like, no, be specific. What do you mean by this? Exceptional performers are able to maintain a dual focus on both the task at hand, so like the code that they've got in front of them, as well as how it fits into the bigger picture. And I'm not talking about how it fits into the architectural system. I'm saying how what they're doing impacts what the company is doing, what the goals are for the quarter. If you don't know what they are, ask. Sometimes we get promoted without any management experience because we were really good at coding that thing, so here's 14 people. You know, that happens in our industry a lot. And sometimes you get a bad manager, not because they're trying to be, but because they just haven't had the training yet to know how to be a good manager for you. So it's helpful if you help them out and ask them, what is the big picture? Do you know what the goal is here? If they don't bring it to you first, please help them out. These people also are comfortable with being uncomfortable. I've learned that this is going to be true forever now in my career. You have to be working on things that are difficult for you. Even if you are distraction-free and get a lot of coding hours in, if you're just building the same kinds of applications or the same kinds of APIs over and over again, that is not necessarily stretching the boundaries of your skills. And do not blame it on the place that you work that they haven't given you something interesting to do. We've already talked about how you can go outside of that and demonstrate what you are interested in. These people also like their colleagues. Yes, I know, all of them. This sounds crazy, but almost all of these really well-known developers seem to have this in common. High performers are in tune with the people around them, and they can sense when they need something. They possess soft skills like empathy. Who knew? That's an important skill to have as a developer. They take the time and make the effort to try to understand every single one of the people that they have to work with on a regular basis. A high performer will put the human part of the developer first and seek that connection, because only then can there be real trust. Otherwise, I'm going to think you're going to judge me because I don't trust you as a person. I totally trust your architecture, but I don't know that you're not going to put me down, and I don't know that I can be honest about how much I know about a subject with you, because I'm going to feel like it's always competitive, right? And some people say it's healthy to be competitive, with your colleagues. I actually think there is no place for it in software. We desperately need to cooperate. If you compete all the time, you're holding up the process of collaboration. Doesn't mean you can't bring a competing idea. I'm not talking about that. But trying to be like, who can work more overtime? Who is here late? Who is the latest person? Who got the least amount of sleep is ridiculous. That's the worst kind of way to produce good work. You might get lucky once in a while based on your skill level, but over time it won't work and the team will fall apart. Because empathy is about being concerned about the human and not just their output. Every person needs to be seen and understood and validated. That is just the way we are as humans. And even though I would like all the mushy stuff to go to the corner and just deal with the tech, we are part of the tech. Part of the reason some of our applications aren't usable is because we didn't think about the human that was going to use the application. It may work according to spec, but did anybody check if the spec was human usable at all? Nope, maybe. That we say, oh, that's UX person's job. Well, you may not work in a company large enough to have that kind of department. So maybe it's your job. If you don't know anything about human beings, then how are you going to be able to build software that works for them, that's meaningful? So how do you become a trusted voice? This is interesting to me because I really wanted to be respected, but I never thought about being trusted. I just wanted to be respected. It's very difficult for me to naturally get respect in the area of the world that I am in, because there aren't a lot of developers that look like me, talk like me, act like me. Okay, so it's hard for people don't just automatically assume I know what I'm doing. I feel like I constantly just have to prove myself, have the verbal version of my resume. I've discovered that people really just want to trust you, and trust doesn't necessarily have to come between doing a lot of like pair programming together. It has to do with the way you solve problems and the way you interact on a daily basis with them. Don't schmooze, just engage and be positive and respectful. This sounds like basic stuff you're supposed to learn about in school or perhaps from your parents. But schmoozing is something that is a really big turnoff for me. I don't want you to do that. Instead, as you demonstrate leadership, you have to positively and never ever negatively engage with people that are alongside of you, that report up to you, and that you report to. So be critical as needed, but always be positive about it. And I know that sounds bizarre, like it's not possible, but I have a boss who absolutely makes it possible, let me tell you. I know when I've screwed up. I know when I missed a deadline. I'm very well aware. He also knows enough about me to know that I'm beating myself up right now, so he doesn't need to add fuel to that fire. He can be honest with me, but he can be positive about it. He's like, it's really good that you self-analyze and you already know what we're going to talk about. So, I mean, I could ask you to tell me, well, what are you going to do differently this time? But you've already made a game plan. So I'm excited. Tell me about your game plan. Notice it's the same conversation, but it's positive. If you don't know how to talk like that, get some leadership training. It works really well. So I'm going to give you a little bit of leadership training. Ready? Go. Has anybody seen this quadrant before? Anybody in the audience? Nobody? Okay, like one guy, a couple people. Yay! This is the Radical Candor quadrant in the book by Kim Scott, Radical Candor. It's excellent. We're going to go through each one of these four just so you know the ways in which you can interact with people regardless of whether they're above, below, or alongside you. Let's start with Ruinous Empathy. So there is a television show that lots of Americans like to watch. It's called Friends, and it was around many years ago. There's a scene in one of the episodes where one of the characters is exploring his musical talents. And to be very supportive, one of his friends says, "Oh my gosh, you sound amazing. You should absolutely put a concert together. Isn't great?" When in fact, this person was not amazing, was actually not on key, and really could use some maybe professional lessons. But because he got a false sense of confidence from his friend, he booked a whole theater and sold tickets for people to come and see him perform. And so when it didn't go very well, and he didn't get quite the crowd reaction he expected, he was really hurt. I kind of equate this to when I desperately want to encourage my junior developers, okay? I believe that being positive all the time is awesome. You can be positive, but it's important that you don't do it to their ruin. If they're not ready to be the one to oversee pushing something to production, don't do that to them. Don't say you're totally ready to do that unless you're ready for it to go down. Just be prepared for where they are right now. But invest in their potential. Does that make sense? You can be honest. You just don't have to be overly honest. I would never ask my mother if I look pretty today, because she will always say yes. I would probably ask a fashion person, is this a good outfit for today? And they can tell me yes or no. And not that my mother didn't mean well, it's that it's important that I get the reality of the situation. So the reality of the situation is very important to impart to people you are training. Manipulative insincerity is something that you may or may not have stumbled upon in your time in tech. This particular subject was rough with me. Let's see if any of you find this familiar. Let's say your boss or somebody above your boss comes in and says, "Hey, I know you're learning all this stuff. We're just going to document this incident right now, just to look back and see how far you've come." Is that really what they're doing? No. If you're being documented for something that you did that was not in line with what they want, they're documenting you so they can get rid of you. That is really what's happening. So they're manipulating you into thinking that, you're going to help them, or they're going to help you. But that's not really what's happening. So don't do this. Don't be false in the things that you say to your dev team, your colleagues, or your boss. Which brings me to obnoxious aggression, and I have nothing more to say than Stack Overflow. I mean, it actually drove me away for a time. It's a wonderful site, and I actually do think it's an amazing resource. But my goodness, there are some vocal negative people out there that are just trying to put you down for not having read every single thing about what is new in C#. You could have answered this question yourself if you read the documentation, Yes, but right now, my brain is fried, and I don't know where to go look for this stuff. So I'm asking for help. But people will be obnoxiously aggressive about it. Please do not be this way. You may feel this way, and it's okay to be like, why can't these people just follow basic directions or basic resources we should all know how to do? You can think it, but don't say it. Which leads me to radical candor. Radical candor is that wonderful area that you get to where you know that I've spent some time with you as a person. Like not talking about tech, I know that you like old school video games. Like mine is Oregon Trail. I know it's before your time, but Oregon Trail is mine. And we just talk about that for a little bit. And over time, because I revealed that part of myself to you that has nothing to do with my career, you kind of just trust me more as a person because I was real to you. Because you clearly over time demonstrate you care because you remember that when their birthday was. You remember that they had a cat. You remember that they loved to travel to New Zealand. Okay, you remember these things. And because you care about them as a person, when you need to have a strong, focused conversation about how they can improve, they will be open to listening to you because you've earned the right to give them critical feedback. If you have not earned the right to do that as a human, not because it's your job, you still don't earn it. You don't just get it because you're the boss. You don't just get it because you're the senior dev. Because you've earned an openness between human beings, they are much more likely to implement your suggestion than if you come at them with a way to, and it doesn't even have to be said in a mean way, but if you tell them you're really just not very fast. Okay. Have you said one word to me except for what we're doing in our job? No. Then I might dismiss you as somebody who might be jealous, somebody who might just have a power-hungry attitude, okay? So think about that for a second. Why would I trust what you have to say? Because you don't ever take the time to get to know me as a person at all. But I know over the course of several conferences, I've gotten to know Glenn, right? And Glenn's gotten a chance to know me. And so if he were to come up to me and say, Heather, you talk a little bit too fast during your presentation, I know he's not doing that just so he can feel self-important about knowing the proper cadence of a presentation. He's doing it to help me, and I know that because he's taken the time to get to know me, and I him. You don't have to be best friends, but you do have to connect at a human level. So of this quadrant, pay attention to radical candor. That's where we're getting here. These people are truly open in their connection with others. And it sounds really mushy, but this is all habit. This can all be formed like a habit. Right now, I have a step challenge going because a Fitbit has made me every hour a reminder that has become a habit. I don't even think about how much I walk anymore, whereas I used to not walk at all. Now it's just a neural pathway that has been created in my brain that just happens. So now I don't have to think so much about all this health stuff. It just starts happening. I've made a nice little chart for you to remember. Please don't make fun of my graphic design skills, but here it is. Once you learn why someone is behaving the way that they are, you can generate empathy. If they feel heard and they belong and you've met them on their terms, then that is what fosters that feeling of safety, okay? With safety comes trust. With trust comes the ability to have that radical candor that we talked about. And with radical candor comes open communication, right? And it's far more effective because now you don't have a wall up. With open communication comes improved social ability, okay? With social ability plus the technical ability that we all agreed you have, you can form communicational habits. And when communicating effectively becomes a true habit, you progressively become better and better at understanding empathy. And I kind of call this a connection force multiplier loop. It is the good kind of endless loop that actually helps you not even think about it anymore. It becomes not work for you because you just start doing this naturally because you've created this algorithm in your brain of the proper way to communicate with others to where they trust you, and when they trust you and you improve your ability to be seen, then you will get these opportunities, these coveted opportunities that very few people get, because you're willing to get to know the people around you. You can 10x your career, your happiness, your impact, all of it. Because people will forget what you said and forget what you did, but they'll never forget how they made you feel, like what Dave and Neil shared with us at our opening keynote. You are absolutely in control of the impression that you set. The first 5 minutes, the first 5 seconds, you have that. You have to focus on the human first and care about them first. And accomplishments will come when people can open up and become their natural best, right? I don't fear the person I work for. I don't fear the people I work with because they show that they care about me first. And that kind of lets me relax and be awesome at what I'm doing. I don't have to worry about all that other social anxiety. That only happens through connection. So remember, here's a little recap. To advance your career, you have to make sure you got skill, but we got that, right? Got it. Attitude, change it. If it's a bad one, change it. You absolutely have the ability to still be you and not be grumpy. I promise. I promise you can still be yourself. There is a little bit of luck to this, but if some luck comes your way, grab it as an opportunity. If an opportunity comes your way, don't say no to it, just because it's a little bit scary if somebody gives it to you. My own experience in business has taught me that career advancement depends on a combination of these factors, okay? So to become visible, make sure you show others that you see them first. You don't have to be, look at me, look at me. You have to make sure that they know you exist, but show them that you acknowledge who they are. To become visible, you need to share what you've done often. Yes, often. Could be every day. To become visible, you need to inspire by example and not just by telling somebody. You need to be that example of what you want to have and change. As Richard Branson puts it, if you want to stand out from the crowd, give people a reason to not forget you. It could be a funny hat. It could be the fact that you are a beekeeper on the side. It could be lots of things. It could be that you wrote a cool library that is no longer relevant in about 6 months. What makes people remember you is the way in which you solve problems and you solve communication. Be so good they can't ignore you, and know that you're good enough. Please do not hide it. You need to be a vibrant, colorful part of the monochromatic, binary world that we live in. You can be a natural part of the scene and stand out at the same time. That requires bravery, but the result is completely worth it. So I would argue it's good not to blend in. It's good to be the quirky one, as long as you realize if you put the other people first in front of you, you're not tearing them down to build yourself up. You're bringing them together, and it's naturally pushing you up. Make sense? My friends, thank you, and stay curious.